Welcome back to Hockey Eastern Ontario's Rule of the Week, where each week we take a rule or a situation from the Hockey Canada rulebook and break it down for our officials, our coaches, and our players so that they can better understand the rule and how to apply it in a game situation. What do you do when you have to go over to a bench and communicate with a coach who is upset or annoyed? We got some steps for you to follow. Stay tuned. So this week, we're going to talk about a situation that officials deal with all the time and often dread. And that is when you have a coach who's upset about a call on the ice and wants to speak to you. Well, first off, we don't go to speak to a coach at every opportunity or every time they want us to go over there. Otherwise, we'd never get the game finished. So there's really only 3 situations that we would go and speak to a coach during a stoppage in play. Okay, that's not at the end of the period or at the end of the game. That is in a multiple penalty situation. So you have multiple penalties to both teams. You want to explain to the coach what happened, why you called what you called. That's number 1. Number 2, a disputed goal or some sort of wacky situation that happens on the ice that you need to go over and explain to the coach what happened, something different, etc. Or if you have a situation where a coach is really, really upset and wants to speak to you, you can go over. For example, if you have an injured player, they're upset because there should have been a call made and we didn't make the call. That would be another situation that we might go over and speak to the coach, assuming that when you go over, the coach calms down and is able to talk to you reasonably and rationally. Okay, so that's the first thing. If a coach wants to talk to you during the game, you can always ask to speak to them at the end of the period or at the end of the game. Sometimes coaches will strategically try to get you to delay so that they can run out the clock on the game clock. We see what you're doing there sometimes, coaches. Not all the time, but sometimes. So you want to think about the context here and when the best time is to go speak to a coach. But today we're going to talk to you about some steps that you can follow when you go over to speak to a coach, and they're actually called TALK, T-A-L-K. So let's get into that in some more detail. TALK is actually an acronym standing for take your time, address concerns, listen effectively, and keep it concise. So let's break those down in a little bit more detail. Take your time. So when you're getting ready to go over to the bench, a mistake that officials often make is that they go over right away. They're upset, they're anxious, they're angry, whatever. This is going to allow you to get your emotions to get the better of you, and therefore you're probably not going to have a very successful interaction. The first thing we recommend officials do is to actually take a deep breath before you go to the bench. This gives you time to gather your thoughts, slows down your heart rate, and calms your emotion if you're upset. So how do we do that? It's actually really simple. We take a deep breath in through our nose, we push the air down into our lungs, and then you should wait a couple of seconds and then slowly exhale through your mouth as if you're blowing out through a straw, right? So as an example, okay. Believe it or not, it doesn't take very long to do this, and you can do a couple of these. It is the fastest way we know how to settle down the physiological response in the body when we're kind of all hyped up and settle down that sympathetic nervous system, okay? And it's actually going to be really effective for us when we're trying to go over and deal with a coach because it pulls us out of our head for a second, brings us back into the present, and allows us to address the situation in a calm, reflective, and positive way. Professionalism also starts in this step. A more relaxed and confident official is going to be able to handle a conflict situation with a coach much more successfully than an official who is upset and flustered. Before talking with the coach, make sure to politely ask the coach to step down from the bench so that you and they are at the same level. Ideally, talk to the coach near the end of the bench where you're free from distractions like assistant coaches or players. This is why the take your time step is such an important one. It allows you to relax, focus, and think about what you need to do when you go over to the bench instead of just kind of racing over there and diving right in. Okay, so you go over, you ask the coach to step down so that you're at the same level, and you want to get them near, say, to the gate so that the players are kind of away and the assistant coach is away. What happens is when you go over and you don't do that, players start to jump in, assistant coaches start to jump in, and now you're trying to argue and debate things with like 3 or 4 or 5 people. Okay, so that's why the take your time step at the beginning is really important. Take that second, pull yourself together, relax yourself, think about what you need to do when you go over to the bench. The second step is called address concerns. So coaches will often wish to talk to you about a specific call on the ice. Make sure to calmly and factually explain to the coach what you saw or didn't see, as well as the reason why you made a particular call or didn't make a call. Maintain a comfortable eye contact, stand up straight, keep your voice at an even pitch. So why is it important to maintain your voice at a particular pitch and to stand up straight and kind of look confident, maintain comfortable eye contact? When we say comfortable eye contact, we mean we're looking at someone and we're kind of looking away for a second, we're looking back, etc. We're not doing this because this is not comfortable for anybody, okay? So why are these things important? Does anyone know what percentage of your communication is nonverbal? It's actually 93%. 55% of our communication with each other is body language, and 38% is paralanguage, which is not actually what we say, but how we say it, the tone of voice, these kinds of things. Only 7% of our communication is actually about the words we use. This is why we often have trouble deciphering text messages and things like that, because if there's any ambiguity in the messaging, we'll take it in a negative context, right? So really important to kind of stand up straight, look confident, even if you're not confident. That's okay. It's okay not to feel confident, but if you look confident, that's going to go a long way to communicating with a coach, okay? And addressing the concerns. Why factually and calmly? Because we just want to, this isn't personal. This is not personal for us, okay? We want to go over and say, Coach, so here's what I saw down the corner. I saw these two guys run into each other. And so from my perspective, there didn't seem to be any effort on the part of either player to hit the other player. They were both racing after the puck. That's why I didn't call a body checking penalty on that play right there, okay? That allows you to kind of explain what you saw from their perspective. Then the next step is going to be listening, and we have to listen to them effectively, which we'll talk about next. What do we mean by listening effectively? If you want the coach to listen to you, then you have to listen to them. We often listen to respond rather than to understand. Resist the urge to jump in and interrupt the coach and defend yourself. Give them the opportunity to express their concern, then you can respond. This is a really important step. Often when coaches call referees over to the bench, they're upset over something that's happened on the ice. It may be that they feel their team has been wronged in some way, or there's some safety issue. When appropriate, we need to give that coach the opportunity to express their concerns, as long as they do it in a respectful way. I don't expect any official to go over to the bench and be yelled and screamed at. That's why I ask officials to take that deep breath, and when they go over, use a slow pace of a voice, nice and low. If a coach continues to yell and scream, you need to be able to say to a coach, look, I came over to explain the call to you and to listen to you, but I'm not going to be disrespected. This is not appropriate. And at that point, you can either skate away if they don't lower their voice, or you could wind up giving a bench minor penalty or a game misconduct penalty. Obviously, that's not what we hope happens. Going over to the bench and simply putting your hand up and telling the coach, I'm not going to listen to you. Here's how things are going to be. It's not a recipe for success. No one is going to appreciate it. No one is going to respect it, okay? And ultimately, what you want is respect in these leagues that you're working, okay? So when you go over, it's important to listen. And so how do we demonstrate that listening skill? Well, there's a couple of nonverbal cues you can use. Remember how I said earlier, 93% of our communication is nonverbal. One way that we can demonstrate that we're listening to people is simply a head nod. So as someone is talking to you, just go, We talked earlier about eye contact. We want to maintain eye contact at a comfortable level. And you can also use things like, I understand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. These are all ways to demonstrate that you're listening. A crucial, crucial step. You'll find that when you go over to a bench, the addressing concerns and listening steps are often interchangeable. Sometimes a coach will start by explaining his concerns, and then you can respond and address those concerns. But throughout that interaction, you should be listening, and you should be providing an explanation as to what you did or what you called on the ice. Another crucial point about listening is that it's important that we listen to understand and not just listen to respond. Often in our interactions with people, we listen long enough for us to think about what we're going to say next. And then while we're focused on that, we're actually not listening to the other person. So when we listen to coaches, we want to actually take the information in a non-judgmental way, listen to what they have to say, take that moment to think before you respond, right? This will prevent things from getting worse or saying something that you're going to later regret. So a successful communication here is really taking the time to listen. It is an absolutely crucial step. Now on to the last step. The last step is keep it concise. You want to address the concern with the coach and listen to their perspective. You want to make your point or points to help understanding and then move on. Remember to only deal with one issue during a visit to the bench. Part of keeping it concise is not spending a lot of time at the bench talking about multiple issues. Ask the coach what the question is or the issue is and deal only with that issue or situation. Remember, the goal here is not to get the coach to agree with you. The goal is to provide an explanation. I see officials make this mistake all the time. They think that the interaction is not successful unless the coach is in full agreement with them. That'd be great if it happened, but that rarely is the case. A successful interaction with a coach is you doing a good job of explaining what you saw on the ice, why you made the call that you did, as well as the coach being given an opportunity to share their perspective, what their concerns are, etc. If they agree with you after the explanation, that's wonderful. If they don't, that's okay too. And your job isn't to stay there and convince them. What you want to say at the end is, coach, does that make sense? Okay. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And at the end, it's also a good idea to say to the coach, thanks for your feedback. I'll keep that in mind. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay. That's a successful interaction. Keep in mind that you have no control over how a coach responds. The only control you have is how you present yourself, okay? So are you stood up straight? Are you competent? Are you answering questions as best you can? Are you providing a reasonable explanation that's coherent and makes sense to the coach? Are you listening? If you do those things, it's a successful interaction. In summary, here are the talk steps. First, take your time. Take that deep breath before you go over to the bench to kind of gather your thoughts and to kind of settle yourself down so that you're going to be able to communicate with the coach in an effective way. Make sure that they step down from the bench and that there's no one else around so when you're talking to them. Address concerns. Make sure that you communicate in an effective way by explaining calmly and factually what you saw on the ice and why you made the call that you did. If you made a mistake, say so. Coaches will have a lot more respect for an official in the long run who acknowledges a mistake than one that tries to lie about it. Listen effectively. If you want the coach to listen to you, it's really important that you take the time to listen to them. Not just listening to hear them, but listening to actually understand their perspective. Finally, keep it concise. A mistake that officials often make is feeling that the coach needs to agree with them at the end of the discussion. That's not the case. Our goal there is to help the coach understand why we made the decision that we did and give them the opportunity to speak their piece as well. So there you have it. Those are the talk steps. I hope this provides you with a little bit more guidance about how you can go over and communicate with coaches. We understand that this can be very stressful. I started refereeing when I was 13, and I always found it intimidating communicating with coaches when I was younger. As I've gotten older and gotten more practice and more experience, I've become a lot more comfortable with it. The key is we need to practice, and we don't want to avoid those situations in a game because it can actually make the situation worse than it needs to be. The best officials I've ever worked with are the best communicators. I hope that helps. If you have any questions about this video or any of the videos in our series, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. My email address is below. You can also feel free to reach out to your referee-in-chief, whether it's a district referee-in-chief or your association referee-in-chief. You can also reach out to John Reed. He is the referee-in-chief of Hockey Eastern Ontario, and he is more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. Before we go, just a quick reminder to please like this video and subscribe to the channel for all of the great content we have here. And please spread the word. We want to help people better understand the game and how we can improve communication with each other on the ice. As always, have a safe and wonderful week. We'll see you back here real soon. All the best.